Hello there, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, on whatever part of the planet you're watching from. I remain Oluwa Falakemi, founder of OKCouture.com. We're still at the early stage of our journey. We plan to make tutorials on craft and then take it further to pattern drafting and further into how we make one of our own in-house designs. I promise this journey will be worthwhile. Let's get started. For the first of our series, that will be pin cushion. You might want to ask, okay, fine, why pin cushion? I've been to several shops where they make clothes and realized a lot of people really don't put into consideration how to manage their pins, needles, and the likes. It just flies around all around the place and it's always more like a mess. So I thought, okay, fine, let's dive into how to make it. I'm sure you're not a culprit, but if you are, this is a solution for you. Let's get started. Here's a list of what is required for us to make it. We'll be making two different types, one without elastic, the other with elastic. You might need to drape. As such, you will need pins with you while you're standing beside your mannequin. It won't be so cool to have your pin cushion elsewhere and you're standing by the mannequin so that you now go back and forth. That alone will disorganize you. So for you have to put elastic so that you can hang it on your finger or even hang it on your machine somewhere where it can just hold and not fall off. But the other one without elastic, you can put that on your cutting table, whatever, so that it's close to you, because that's the whole essence. You don't want to start looking for pins when you need them. You have them really close to you and you can just pick them and use them when you're ready to use them. For this one, we'll pin two pieces of the 4.5 inch by 4.5 inch together. Draw a line diagonally, that means from one angle to the other as seen. Sew on the line, detach your pins. After you're done sewing, mark 1 centimeter from the line you sewed. Draw a line. The line becomes a guide to how you would cut out the excess fabric, because the excess, you really don't need it, so there's no point having it within the pin cushion, so just trim it off. Once that is done, take it to your steam press and press the seams open. That done, pull the two together. Before you put them together, mark your 1 centimeter seam allowance on the edge. Really, that becomes a guide to sewing. You don't roll it all the way around. If you notice, I left like 1 inch allowance. That will be the opening to turn it right side out when we're done sewing the sides. You can place it whichever way you want to place it, but for me, I want the seams to align, the diagonal seam. Once you're done pinning, take it to your sewing machine and sew around, leaving the opening, because that will be the point to which you will turn it right side out. Once you're done sewing, snip off the edges, because that will cause a budge. Once you're done snipping the edges, turn it right side out. It should look like so. Afterwards, stuff in your button. When we're talking about the requirement for making this, if you notice, we wrote sewing machine and we also introduced hand needles. For this one, I'll be using hand needle to do the finishing. As such, I'll be using blind stitch. If you're not paying too much attention to the edges, you won't see where it ended. That's the whole essence of using hand needle rather. But for the second one we'll be doing, I'll be using the sewing machine to sew the edge. In that one, you can see it. If you look around it, you will see where the stitches were placed. Once you're done, snip off the remaining thread, and we have our pin cushion without elastic. That's it, with me stuffing pins into it. Now to the second one, the pin cushion with elastic. Pin the 5x by 5" fabrics together, right side together. Mark 1" seam allowance on the edge. 1 centimeter rather, 1 centimeter seam allowance on the edge. Roll it out. That becomes your guide to sewing. Like we did for the first one, you leave 1 inch gap. That will be the point where you can turn it inside out. You leave 1 inch gap. That will be the point where you turn it inside out. Then you bring out your elastic. The elastic I'm using is 1 inch wide. As such, I mark 1 inch in the middle. If you notice, the piece of fabric we're using is 5 inch. As such, we can divide it into 5 different places, and such that we have 1 inch right in the center. That 1 inch, mark it out and align your elastic to the 1 inch. Put your elastic and pin it in place. Do the same for the other side. Once you're done, sew around. We're done sewing, we have to remove the pins. Snip off the edges. Turn it right side out. Then infuse your batten. Remember to poke out the edges to avoid having it looking funny. The edges are supposed to be sharp because they're actually 90 degrees. That's it, completed. You can see the one with elastic is hanging on my finger. That's the one with elastic right there, hanging on the sewing machine, while the one without elastic is sitting on the table of the sewing machine. That's how it is. I would love to see your own outcome. That's it for pin cushion. Now to buyers. How this works, how it can be used would be treated in our next video. Thank you for your time. See you in our next video. Bye.